One of the many things that the Final Horizon got right in Sonic Frontiers was the level design. And I'm not talking about the aesthetics of the open zone or the cyberspace stages, but I mean all of the actual design of the platforming and gameplay for both cyberspace and the open zone. Actually, I think it's better if I define what I mean by level design clearly here, so what I'm referring to when I talk about level design in this video is the actual platforming and moment-to-moment gameplay challenges that come up. Like all the little platforming segments within the open zone, you know the ones, or the entirety of the cyberspace levels, where you're moving fast and trying to reach an end goal. Now I've already gone over the new cyberspace stages, which I thought were a great addition to the Final Horizon and very much improved the cyberspace formula, but I'd also like to take a look at the gameplay of the Final Horizon as a whole. There's a lot that's been added to Frontiers that's added up over time, and I think the Final Horizon might have been Sonic Team's first attempt at a new style of level design for Sonic games, and more specifically the open zone style. Given how much of a success Sonic Frontiers was for Sega, I'd like to bet that they'll probably be sticking with this gameplay formula for at least one more game, and you can even see the progression of experimentation that Sonic Team went through with the updates for Sonic Frontiers. One of the biggest asks from the players, even before Frontiers came out, was the addition of momentum to the game. And while we didn't get it on launch, we did get some implementations of momentum with the second update for Frontiers, which can most easily be felt when using the spin dash that was added in that update. And of course, making sure you actually have the momentum settings enabled. Now, momentum in Frontiers was something that the game wasn't built in mind with, so most of the platforming challenges either don't require it or can easily be skipped because of it, but the new challenges that included momentum-based platforming absolutely took advantage of it. This is where I believe that experimentation that I was talking about started to occur from Sonic Team. They really went all in with the new challenges and momentum that they added, which I think was a legitimate addition to the game because of player feedback. I don't think they had originally planned on adding momentum to Frontiers, because like I said, the game wasn't originally built with it in mind, but I think after the vast fan outcry for the addition of momentum was seen by them, they decided to do some experimenting. Seriously, go take a look at Kishimoto's Twitter if you don't believe me. He's constantly looking at and replying to fan feedback and suggestions, and you can tell that he really cares about making the best game that he can. But anyways, back to the level design. If you've played any of the Final Horizon, or challenges from Update 2, then you can definitely tell what I mean when I say they were experimenting. A big complaint of the Final Horizon was the over-punishing level design while climbing the trial towers. A lot of the towers are gauntlets of skill, and sometimes just luck, but they definitely played a lot differently to most other parts of Sonic Frontiers, specifically the open zone parts. Another similar comparison to the trial towers are the challenges in Update 2. Now these aren't as long, but they do test your skill and are generally more difficult than any platforming that was in the base game of Frontiers. So I think you can see where I'm going here. The implementation for aspects of level design like momentum and difficulty were both done in updates of Sonic Frontiers rather than starting from scratch in a brand new game. And quick side tangent, but I think that's part of why Sonic Superstars feels so oddly difficult at some points, because they didn't have any previous game to test things out on. Okay, tangent over. But now that they have all the feedback from the updates of Sonic Frontiers, I think Sonic Team is going to really take that into account when making their next game now, and will really try to create a difficult but balanced experience for the next game. I wouldn't feel this way as much if I didn't also see Kishimoto directly interacting with fans, but since he does, that gives me a lot of hope that he's really looking at what people enjoy and what they don't, so that the next game can be as good as possible. Now moving on from experimentation in Frontiers, I'd like to look at what I think could use some improvement. First up, I think that the open zone areas of Sonic games, if they continue to do them in future games, absolutely need to be more incorporated into the level design of the game. As much as I don't really mind the visuals of the rails and platforms all floating in the air, I think the over-reliance on them, especially in the Final Horizon, really starts to hinder the creativity and fun of just running around in the open zone. Like, honestly, tell me, how many times have you booted up Frontiers just to run around the open zone? I can tell you that I haven't done it very much, especially before they added momentum, and that's because there just isn't very much to interact with in terms of running around the actual terrain of the islands. My favorite one, after the addition of momentum, was probably Chaos Island, because I liked trying to jump between each island without hitting any rails. But really other than that, there's just not much to do when running around the open zone. Either you're running around relatively flat areas, or the hills and mountains just don't let you run up them because you start to slide down them immediately. What I want from the open zone in the next game is level design that is integrated into the actual maps of the game. Make using your surroundings integral to the gameplay and platforming. I want loops and corkscrews. I want varying pathways and heights that you can climb up to. I want mountains with tunnels and cliffs that you can run on. I want actual Sonic gameplay, but integrated into the open zones, not just rails and platforms placed around that mimic level design. Now this is gonna sound weird, but bear with me for a second. I think the next Sonic game should legitimately do what Sonic Speed Simulator on Roblox does for their open world areas. Now that game has its own problems. Actually, it has a lot of problems. But I've actually gone into Sonic Speed Simulator and just ran around the maps in that game because they have a genuinely fun running loop to them, and platforming around just feels good. Pretty much the complete opposite of Sonic Frontiers' open zones. There's a lot of other examples I can provide. A lot of Sonic fan games have an open worldy style of level design. But really, I think that this is one of the biggest things that a sequel to Sonic Frontiers could use, making the world of the game a part of the level design. Now that one is probably my biggest one for the next Sonic game, but there's a couple more things that I'd also like to see in the open zone for the next game. I liked the Trial Towers, not just because they were hard, but because they were platforming challenges in the open zone that took longer than just a few seconds to complete. I know a big appeal of Frontiers is going from one collectible to the next and making sure the player always has a bunch of different things to do, but some of my favorite parts of the open zones in Frontiers are the longer segments, usually because they have some cool gimmicks and actual thought put into their level design. Some quick examples of this are of course the Trial Towers, but also the underground areas on Ares and Chaos Island. In order to get to some further away islands, you need to travel underground, and these segments are super cool because you aren't getting distracted by a bunch of different things at once, and the level design can focus on pushing the player forward towards a specific goal. So maybe what I'm actually looking for here are more goal-focused objectives in the open zone. Again, I'm cool with the main focus being on collectibles, but also including some longer segments that feel like mini Sonic levels, while also incorporating the terrain like in Ares and Chaos Island would be super cool to see. Just throwing out suggestions here, but maybe each open zone area could have some specific spots on the map that you need to get to, because they have something there, maybe like a Chaos Emerald. And to get there, you have to do some actual platforming and traverse the world like an actual level. Sorta like on Ares Island when you need to get the yellow Chaos Emerald, and there's the platforming section that you need to cross, which felt like I was playing an actual Sonic level. Now both of those focus on the level design of the open zone, which this video is about, but another part that needs improvement, which also greatly affects how levels are designed, is the player controller. I went over this a bit in my Final Horizon review, but the player controller in the open zone needs just a bit more work before it's perfected. First, I need Sonic, or whoever I'm playing as, to be able to go anywhere in the open zone, aside from the obvious edges of the map, where I shouldn't need to go anyways. But running up walls, or even just hills and sharp angles, should be a standard part of Sonic's moveset and not require any predetermined wall climbing areas to be laid out. Having those in the game is fine, I think they work well when climbing purely vertical towers and such, but running up a wall or hill as Sonic should not require any specific terrain in order to work. If I have enough speed, I should be able to run upside down and not fall down because the game says I can't. This has literally been a part of Sonic since his first game, when you run through loops or go up and down slopes, and I think if they can fix that aspect of Sonic's controls, then there could be a lot more freedom with the map design as well, because rather than having these big, flat open areas, we could have super interesting and dynamic terrain that you have to navigate. Aside from that, there's a few janky things that need ironing out, like momentum being implemented into the game from the start and not needing settings to enable, but really, I think it's mostly just quality control that the player controller was lacking, probably because they weren't able to test everything 100% perfectly, which I think they definitely should do for the next Sonic game, since they should be getting a bigger budget, as well as just caring more about the quality of the franchise, now that they've actually managed to win back the general fanbase. Sonic Team is in this weird middle ground, where I don't think they have a very far way to go until they reach a completely amazing game, but they need to work on hammering out all the little issues first until they get there. And that's about it. Those are my big 3 suggestions for improving Sonic level design for the next game. More integrated open zone maps, longer objective-based platforming, and a more dynamic player controller. And I want to know in the comments, what kinds of things would you improve for Sonic level design in the future? And what do you think of my suggestions? I definitely don't expect my answers to be the end-all be-all, and I'm sure some of you guys have some great suggestions as well. And I have to give a huge thank you to everyone who has subscribed to my channel and helped me reach 1,000 subscribers. I plan to keep going strong, and you all watching and supporting my content makes me want to keep making more of it, so thank you. Don't forget to like the video if you enjoyed it, and maybe even click the subscribe button if you want to as well, and I'll see you next time.